I had just buried my mother when my brother-in-law looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Don't think you can use your grief to manipulate us." He then told my husband I was unstable and needed to be handled. That night, I found my bedroom door locked, my clothes on the lawn, and a text from my husband. "Stay at a hotel. We need space." I walked away in shock. But 3 weeks later, he opened the door to a courtroom summons that said, "My mom died in February in a hospice bed at home in Indianapolis. She'd been fighting stage 4 pancreatic cancer for over a year, and by the end, she barely recognized me. I was the one who gave her sponge baths. I was the one who sat with her through the seizures and hallucinations when the pain meds got too strong. I put my life on hold to take care of her because she was my mother. She raised me alone after my dad bailed when I was 9. There was no one else.
Just me.
My husband Mark said he understood.
Said he supported me.
Said all the right things for a while. But as the months dragged on, he started getting distant. I chalked it up to stress. His new business with his brother Aaron was taking off, or so he claimed. They were running some kind of corporate consulting outfit out of a rented office suite on the east side. It always felt vague. But Mark kept insisting it was legit, and they were doing well. Still, when I asked him for help with Mom's mounting care expenses, he suddenly got tight with money. Said we needed to be strategic. Meanwhile, he was buying himself a brand new F-150 and disappearing for weekend client retreats with Aaron. I should have paid more attention. I should have asked harder questions. But I didn't. Because I was too busy trying to keep my mother alive. When she died, something inside me collapsed. I was so numb at the funeral, I didn't even cry. I was just trying to breathe and not fall apart in front of everyone. And then Aaron came up to me. He didn't hug me. Didn't say sorry for my loss. He just stood there with this smug little smirk and said, real calm, "Don't think you can use your grief to manipulate us." I looked at him like he had 2 heads. I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He shrugged. "You've been unstable for months. We've all been walking on eggshells. You're not the only one with a life." Then he walked off.
Just like that. And Mark?
My own husband? He stood nearby and didn't say a word. Just looked down at the floor like he didn't know me. I left the funeral early. I couldn't take it. I felt sick. Drove back to our house in Franklin Township, where I'd lived for over a decade, and the code on the door didn't work. At first I thought it was a glitch. Then I saw the trash bags. 2 of them. My clothes, shoes, even a framed photo of me and Mom. Just dumped in the grass like garbage. I texted Mark. "The door won't open. What's going on?" He replied, "Stay at a hotel. We need space. You're not well. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable." Reasonable. That word stayed with me. Like I'd done something wrong by grieving my mother. Like I was the problem. I didn't stay at a hotel. I drove to my friend Denise's place. She used to work with me back when I was at the hospital admin office. She let me sleep on her pull-out couch. I didn't say much for the first few days. I was embarrassed. Humiliated. But Denise didn't push. She just fed me and gave me space. Once I could think straight, I started digging. I went through our bank records, well, what I could access. Some accounts had been moved. I found transactions I didn't recognize. Consulting fees to people I'd never heard of. Expensive meals, hotel stays, even a couple of charges from a jewelry store in Fishers. But I hadn't received any jewelry. I found out Mark had quietly transferred ownership of our house to a business entity tied to his brother's company, which meant I no longer legally owned any part of the house I helped pay for, that I cleaned, that I made into a home. He did it while I was at my mother's bedside. They didn't just abandon me. They planned this. And the worst part? They wanted me to believe it was my fault. That I was unstable. That I'd lost perspective. But I wasn't crazy. I was grieving. So I lawyered up. It took a few days to find someone who actually listened. A woman named Janice Patel out of downtown Indy. Sharp as hell. She walked me through my options. We pulled phone records. We documented the financial moves. She helped me file for legal separation, an emergency injunction on any further asset transfers, and a formal fraud investigation into Mark's new LLC. 3 weeks to the day after my mother's funeral, Mark opened his door to find a uniformed server handing him a thick envelope. And one for Aaron, too. I didn't answer their calls. They wanted space. Now they had legal space. And I was just getting started. Mark didn't try to see me in person. Not once. Instead, I got a string of passive-aggressive texts the day after he was served. Wow. So this is how you want to handle things. You need help. And I've been nothing but patient. Aaron says we should still try mediation. I agree. I didn't reply.
Because nothing he said was about me.
Nothing about what he'd done, or how he'd thrown me out of my own home 3 hours after I buried my mother. He was spinning the narrative, trying to make it look like I had gone off the deep end, and he was the victim. Janice, my lawyer, warned me it was coming. They'll paint you as unstable. A grieving woman who got emotional. Be ready.
Stay calm.
Let us build the case. And we did. Turns out, Mark and Aaron had created 3 shell companies under the same parent name. One in Indiana, one in Kentucky, and one in Nevada. On paper, it looked like business diversification. But when Janice brought in a forensic accountant, we found money moving in strange circles. Consulting fees being paid from one entity to another. A car registered in Nevada. A second apartment in Louisville under Aaron's name, paid for by marketing expenses. I couldn't believe how deep it went. They'd been moving money out of the joint account for months. And the worst part? Some of it came from the inheritance my mother left me. Not much, just $18,000. But it was all she had left, and she wanted me to have it. Mark knew that. I had left it in our joint savings while dealing with funeral costs. 2 days after she died, he wired it into a business account. When I confronted him through the lawyers, he said it was for tax efficiency. That was the moment I stopped feeling sad. The grief was still there, but it shifted into something sharper. Focused. I wasn't just a woman who lost her mother. I was being robbed and erased by a man who had once vowed to protect me. Then it got worse. Mark filed a motion for a psychological evaluation. Claimed I was emotionally erratic and potentially self-harming. He attached a statement from Aaron supporting the claim. They submitted text messages I'd sent during my mom's worst nights. Stuff like, I can't do this anymore, or I feel like I'm drowning. They tried to turn my grief into evidence of mental instability. Janice fought it hard. We brought in character witnesses, Denise, old coworkers, even Mom's hospice nurse. I passed every evaluation they threw at me, but it was exhausting. I felt like I was being dragged naked through a courtroom while they smirked in tailored suits. Then Aaron made the mistake of sending me an email. It was short. Just 1 sentence. Maybe next time you'll think twice before acting crazy. He must have forgotten that threats and harassment during active litigation are traceable and admissible. That email went straight to Janice. We added it to the complaint. We amended our claim to include intentional infliction of emotional distress, financial abuse, and spousal fraud. That's when Mark finally tried to reach me, this time through his sister, Lisa. She called me crying, saying he's falling apart, and can't you just talk to him? I asked her one question. Where was he when I was standing in the cold with my mother's ashes and a bag of my clothes on the lawn? She had no answer. About a week after we added the emotional distress claim, Janice got a call from a lawyer she didn't know. He represented Emily, Aaron's ex-wife. Emily and I had met a few times over the years, but we were never close. She and Aaron split 5 years ago, and all I knew was that the divorce had been nasty. What I didn't know was that Aaron had done to her what he and Mark were now doing to me: financial deceit, asset hiding, gaslighting. Only Emily didn't have a good lawyer back then. She lost nearly everything and had to rebuild from scratch while raising their daughter. But now, she was ready to talk. Emily had quietly been collecting documents over the past few years: old tax filings, emails, business registration forms. She suspected Aaron had been hiding money even during their marriage. But she never had the resources to take him back to court.
Until now. She offered to testify.
Janice met with her in person and came back with a thick folder. Inside were financial statements from one of Aaron's companies that directly contradicted the ones Mark submitted in our court filings. There was proof of under-the-table payments, falsified expense reports, and even a text chain between Aaron and Mark joking about offloading the liability before the audit window closed. In other words, they were defrauding not just me, but probably the IRS too. Janice lit up. This isn't just civil. This could go federal. That's when things started to move fast. We filed a formal complaint with the Indiana Department of Revenue. Janice also notified the IRS Criminal Investigations Division. I didn't know if they'd bite, but she said it was worth flagging, especially with Emily backing it up. Then something truly unexpected happened. Mark sent me a handwritten letter. It was the first genuine communication I'd received since this all started. No lawyer speak, no manipulation, just his handwriting on lined paper. He said he was sorry for how he handled Mom's death, that he didn't know how to deal with grief, that Aaron had convinced him I was spiraling and might do something drastic. He admitted he was scared, but not for me. For the business. For his reputation. He said he never wanted to hurt me, that he still loved me, that he wanted to fix things. But then, in the next paragraph, he asked if I'd consider withdrawing everything in exchange for a clean split and some real estate concessions. That's when I realized he wasn't writing from the heart. He was bargaining. He was trying to do damage control. I didn't respond, because Janice had just received word that the IRS was opening a preliminary inquiry. And that wasn't all. One of Aaron's companies had also been flagged for unpaid payroll taxes. We weren't just talking about a divorce anymore. This was about to become criminal. And Mark knew it. The IRS inquiry moved slowly, but it moved. In the months that followed, I watched Mark unravel. His confidence slipped. His lawyer stopped showing up in person and started sending assistants instead. He sold the truck. I heard from Denise, who still had connections near City Hall, that Mark and Aaron's little empire was under serious pressure. There were liens being filed. One of their shell companies quietly dissolved. Aaron's name came up in a deposition for a completely unrelated case, something about unpaid contractors in Louisville. But the real shift came 6 months after I filed. The judge approved the emergency injunction on the house, freezing all property transfers, which meant Mark couldn't sell, rent, or restructure our former home. And since the LLC that now owned the house was tied to the investigation, it was stuck in limbo. He tried to bluff his way through mediation again, offered me full freedom from the marriage, plus a generous cash settlement if I'd sign a non-disclosure clause and drop all other claims. I refused. 2 weeks later, I sat across from him in a courtroom in downtown Indianapolis. Aaron was there too. They looked like they hadn't slept. And for the first time in 17 years, I didn't feel small in front of them. I felt clear. Janice laid everything out. The shell companies, the stolen inheritance, the falsified expense documents, the mental health smear campaign, and the witness intimidation. Emily testified. Calm, composed, devastating. She told the court how Aaron coached her to hide income during their divorce. How he pressured her to say she was unfit for full custody. She had documents to back it up. And then Denise took the stand. She told them how she found me crying in my car the night I was locked out, how she watched me barely eat for days, and how I slowly pieced together the truth of what they had done to me. Mark didn't even try to fight the divorce by then. His lawyer quietly negotiated terms. I got the house back. Full title. He was forced to pay my legal fees. His accounts were frozen pending further review. He had to submit to a court-ordered financial review for back taxes and spousal fraud. Aaron's situation got worse. 2 months later, he was indicted for tax evasion. Turns out Emily's documents triggered something bigger. The guy who used to smirk at me like I was nothing walked into a federal courtroom in handcuffs. Mark wasn't charged yet, but his name was all over the paper trail. He's now under formal audit. His reputation is in shambles. Their business website vanished. Clients stopped returning calls. I heard Aaron's daughter stopped speaking to him completely. As for me, I moved back into my house. It took time to feel comfortable there again, but I did it. I replaced the furniture, painted the walls, burned every photo with Mark's face in it. I scattered my mother's ashes in her favorite park, Eagle Creek, under a maple tree. I told her everything about what they did,
About how I survived.
about how I fought. She would have been proud. They thought I was weak. They thought they could gaslight me into silence, steal what was mine, and walk away clean. Instead, they lost everything they built on lies. And I got my life back. Every painful step was worth it.